Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino DeGregory, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino DeGregory.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino DeGregory. Today we have another amazing guest with us. We have Tim Fisher with us today. He is the president of Aero Elite Flight Training, a systems engineer of an IT company, and also a fellow pilot. I've known Tim for almost 10 years, and I've really got to know him in the last few years here. But it's an amazing, kind leader as well. So welcome, Tim, to the show here. And if you don't mind sharing your background and something about yourself.
Yeah, Gino, thank you so much for having me. You know, my background is pretty varied, like I think most people. I was a military brat. I was a kid. My dad was in the military. We moved all over the country. Loved aviation from the moment I was a kid, like many pilots do, constantly looking up, much to the chagrin of my U.S. Coast Guard father who loved boats. But grew up all over the country, went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, was going to be a professional pilot. Made a slight detour into IT, which was another kind of passion of mine, and have been kind of bridging those two careers and running those two careers together for the last probably 20 plus years.
Wow. All right. So one of the questions that I ask our guests is, what does kind leadership mean to you? The definition from your perspective, please, and then give us an example.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a weird question to answer for some people, and it's a weird question specifically for me to answer because I don't know how else to do it type deal. I just think that there's a lot of stuff happening in the world. There's a lot of stuff happening in people's lives, whether it's work-related, personal-related, and I think leaders have to have the empathy to be able to understand what that stuff is and be able to talk to their employees and be able to empathize with them on what's happening. You know, leaders, we're not immune to those things either. But we've got to be able to go and talk to folks about it. And I just don't really know how else to do it. But I think being a kind leader, being an empathetic leader, that proves over the course of time to also be a successful leader and probably into a successful business. And I think those things just go hand in hand. So I'm not sure how else to do it. I know there's a ton of other ways people do it. Yeah. That's just sort of what was instilled in me and what I push forward.
Very nice. Do you have an example of kind leadership?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting from my background, it's varied, right? You know, I was a flight instructor for many, many years. I was a bartender for many years. I was in IT and a contractor for many, many years. And, you know, over the course of that career, you see leaders who are kind and understanding. And when you come to them and say, hey, I've got something going on here. I need a day off on Friday, or hey, I've been working or whatever. Those leaders have done that. And I've tried to move that forward, whether it's helping my employees with issues, just a shoulder to lend on. I think being able to be both an empathetic leader and you got to be careful about bridging the friend-boss
for sure
border, but being a type of friend with folks, that at least a person that they can come talk to, that you're not this archetype boss figure that they can't approach unless they get through 3 levels of security first. I think being that type of leader and being that type of boss, I've had, you know, I tell my flight instructors, hey, if you need anything, you can call me. We do have, you know, steps to take if it's business related or whatever, but if it's not, you can call me. And honestly, having those people call me and say, hey, I have this question, it's career related, hey, I'm ready to take the next step, what's your advice here? Those are fantastic conversations to have, and being able to guide these young workers and these young pilots and whoever into the next phase of their career is highly rewarding.
Right. And that's the hardest part, I think. It's easier sometimes to say than done, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And people are like, oh, okay, yeah, it's open policy. Okay, great. But how do I do that? Like,
yeah.
You know,
exactly.
Do I just shoot an email or a text or something? And there's that fear sometimes, right?
Yes.
That gets in the way of from the individuals trying to reach to some of these leaders, right? Because we know when we say it, we mean it, right? Hey, open door policy. And it's funny, I was talking to a couple of weeks ago, one of my employees, and I mentioned this to her many, many times. It's like, open door, just shoot me a chat, shoot me a text. I'm open, right? And for some reason that day, her name popped up, and I was like thinking about her, like for whatever reason it was. And I felt like I needed to reach out. All right. So I reached out and say, hey, how are you doing? How's everything? She's like, oh my God, I was just thinking about reaching out and I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know what to think on how to go about reaching you. Sometimes you got to think of a topic or a reason sometimes. And like, you don't have to have a reason.
Definitely do not have to have a reason. Yeah.
Right? There's no reason. And sometimes that blocker that blocks a lot of people that doesn't allow the individual to just say, hey, just shoot an email. What's the worst that can happen? I'm not available right now, but I'll follow up with you tomorrow or later or whatever, right? That's the worst. If this person said open door policy, take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think when, and you can tell in a leader whether they mean they have an open door policy or whether that's just some stuff they say.
Service,
and I think to your credit and hopefully to my own credit, when I say I have an open door policy, I mean I have an open door policy, and I'll tell people, hey, after about 8 p.m. my phone is basically on do not disturb because I'm with my family and we're having dinner and whatever the case may be, but I will get back to you. I will respond. And if it's an emergency, then keep reaching out, call or whatever. But yeah, if you wanted to talk, absolutely, let's chat about it and let's go forward with it.
Yeah. So I like those examples. One of the biggest things that I've been trying to figure out with my guests is like, as we dig deep into the definition, a lot of people think of kindness as just a nice person, right? And sometimes that can be taken advantage of because people, oh, he's nice, he'll be fine, right? Or she'll be fine, or whatever it may be, right? But it's not just about, when I try to define kindness and kind leadership together, that phrase or two words really, from my perspective, is what we need, as in the business world or even in the interaction, the community and stuff like that, right? Because you can lead. And leading essentially is not just leading. You can be leading yourself. You can be leading one other person, but it's about making sure that you are leading with empathy, right? You're caring about the things that are in front of you or the people that you're trying to help.
Well, and it's interesting because I feel like, you read all of I know you're a big business, and you're reading stuff constantly or listening to podcasts and same for me, history, leadership, business related, technology related. And you read about all these like titans of business, and most of the stories that come out about them are about the ruthlessness.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people feel like, oh, if I'm going to be successful, that's how I have to attack things. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I think there's just a complete different way. You can be in some ways ruthless in business and as leaders and owners and presidents and those nice big high titles we kind of give ourselves sometimes. You have to make ruthless decisions, but it doesn't mean there's not empathy behind it. It doesn't mean that there's not kindness is not you're thinking about things. Right. And I think that's where people sometimes get lost. So,
and I think I want to say this carefully, right? Old school, right? Like it's really, I don't want to say it's dying, but it's really the kind leadership is taking more, empathy leading and, servant leaders, they're taking more. It's going to be a big shift in the next 10 years, right? Yeah. Because we're more comfortable talking about it, right? And, and again, it's not about just being nice. It's about the accountability, right? Everything that we're doing, we're accountable to something, to someone.
Yes.
Right? In the business world, we're accountable to our people. We're accountable to our customers and making sure that everything is there. So if we're not accountable from a growth perspective, also the business itself, you need to be accountable to it, right? Like for example, in your business, I think you're straddling two different industries, right? The aviation, and then I don't know how you do it, first of all, the aviation company, and then your IT role there that you have, right? And even though they're different, I think I would love to learn a little about how you're managing those both worlds from a kind leadership perspective, right?
Yeah, the roles, the worlds are totally different, but I think to your point, the leadership concepts are exactly the same. I may have 50 plus flight instructors at the flight school that, look to me as the leader. In the technology space, I have 9 direct reports. So, okay, well, all of those leadership qualities, that goes directly from one to the other. So you can draw easy parallels. In your brain, you can't talk to them about, weather minimums to my technology guys. They're not going to understand that at all.
Yeah.
But, those leadership qualities can maintain, and they can move between those two worlds because they're ubiquitous. You can just continue to use them. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can use them.
Gotcha. So essentially, how you lead, and I figure that I know the answer is yes, but you lead the same way no matter what industry you're in, right?
Yeah, well, I think you got to be yourself,
Exactly.
and so if I'm not myself, then it's not going to work because I'm not going to believe it, and if I don't believe it, then no one's going to believe it.
For sure.
So that's the easy part. The easy part's being yourself. I think it should be
100%.
It should be the easy part. Yeah,
and that's the thing. People create this, I want to call it avatar or even a wall in front of them, thinking that this is what is needed in order for me to be successful. I was listening to this podcast this morning. It's like, be yourself.
Yeah.
Be your genuine self, who you're supposed to be, right? And you're so much comfortable in that energy that you're creating by being yourself, being respectful, doing the things that you're doing, right? And what I mean being yourself is making sure the right things, right? Yeah. I'm not saying go crazy and all those things, but for the most part, us as humans, we're good people.
Yes.
We want to do good things.
Yes.
And unfortunately, sometimes the world around us or just all the information creates this distortion of things, right? That doesn't allow us to truly be ourselves and be successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. People as a whole, generally speaking, I think are good. They're kind. They want to help out their fellow human. They've got a lot of stuff on their plate. And as the world has changed over, my nearly 45 years on this planet, I don't think that changes.
Right.
I just think that what's on everybody's plate sometimes takes more of their energy than being that kind human being to others. Right. But if you can harness that energy, I just fundamentally believe you're going to be successful. And it doesn't matter what you're going to do, whether you're a leader, whether you're an employee, whether you're starting a business, whether you're joining a business. If you harness that energy, it's going to be successful.
Yeah, I love that energy. I mean, it really is about, you got your positive energy. I was talking to a previous guest also. There's a positive energy and there's a negative energy that leaders can, as soon as they walk into the room or into wherever, right? You either bringing value and bringing that energy to the group, or you're taken away from fear, from, it's like, okay, I don't want to be around this person, right? So so you can choose. My point is like that we're trying to accomplish here and tell the audience here is like, you, for the most part, people are good people, right? And one example is like, and I don't know how this will come out, but if you're in an accident, people will stop, right? I mean, we'll stop and help and forget about everything else. Like, how can I help? It's like, you forget about the world and you're in the moment trying to help this individual out, right? And I feel like that's a human nature. That's who we are, who we want to help and want to be,
Yeah, it's humanity in probably its purest form.
Yeah.
Besides a baby, more than likely. But yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coming back to the different worlds and different industries, especially from a high pressure environment, right? We were just talking before the podcast as it relates to like, I'm a pilot, but I am pretty laid back and I'm a risk taker when we're in land, when we're walking around and when it comes to business, I enjoy pushing and driving. But when it comes to flying, I am so risk averse. I am so like, I don't want to say I'm a different person, but it's the accountability of my life, my passengers' lives kicks in. It's like, okay, I have this big responsibility.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong, I feel that's in a high pressure. I'm still nice. I'm still kind. I'm be like, but I got to pay attention to all these different things. So I might be a little bit short in certain things, but I explain to them, right? Prior to that, set the expectations. So there's it's like, what's happening here?
Yeah. I think when you're I'm very similar. I'm super risk averse when it comes to flying. I've been doing it a long time. I have many, many hours, but I'm still very, very risk averse. I don't like to push the envelope. And I think that comes from that responsibility of, if you're driving in a car and you're doing 10 or 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, that can be risky, but somewhere in the deep recesses of your mind that if something goes wrong, you can hit the brakes, you can pull over to the side of the road, you can stop, or if the engine fails, you can just you just coast to a stop. Right. And while flying, you don't have those off ramps or as many of those off ramps as you do when you're standing here on land. And so I think that you make different decisions. And I'm the same way. I'm very chill, laid back in the airplane, but I'm also explanatory. Hey, if we're going through and I'm talking to you and all of a sudden I hear in my headset a radio call and I think it's for us, I may hold my hand up, and I'm not trying to be, a mean or anything, but I actually have to listen to what, air traffic control is telling me for a second. And then we can get back to talking about, sports or whatever we were talking about ahead of time. So I think setting those expectations as a pilot ahead of time to your passengers, saying this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to go through. If we have any kind of issues, we talk about it as pilots, we go through the checklist, we run through, emergency procedures, and we train on emergency procedures. And I think that mindset can translate into business for high pressure situations. You're ready for that. You're thinking about the other things you can do. And so you're ready for when those situations arise.
Right. So if something like, for example, talk about aviation, but bringing it back to business and kind leadership is if, let's say there's an issue that popped up, in technology, with solutions that we have, we deploy something, we did migration. When it comes to something goes wrong, the easiest thing is to get angry and start yelling and start pointing fingers. And I mean, that's the natural, like not natural, but that's when,
for sure,
but as it relates to kind leaders, right? I think the difference is, okay, it's not about the individual.
Yeah.
Something happened, just like in the plane or something we have, right? Something happened. It's not something, it may have been something that the human did, but we can approach it with empathy. We can approach it with, okay, let's not point fingers. Let's go in and solve the problem and worry about any mistakes, worry about anything else for later, right? Compared to like, I've been in situations where somebody makes a mistake and I was part of the team and they're like, oh, Joe, why did you do that? And like calling this person out, and there's no reason for that, right? Compared to like, okay, pause, everybody, nobody's at fault. Let's figure out what happened, including the customer, and let's be clear on what has happened and be honest too. Okay, we own it. If we made a mistake. Here's how we're going to rectify it. Here's how we're going to take it. And sometimes, most part, strengthens the relationship with the customers as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I kind of have a philosophy that we win as a team and we lose as a team. So it's not Joe's fault, sorry, Joe, but it's not Joe's fault that he made a mistake. It was the team's fault. The team made a mistake and the team's going to fix that. And then, it sounds kind of maybe trite or whatever, but I think it's just a conversation. You sit down with the team or Joe. If Joe was the one that had the issue, we sit down with Joe and we say, okay, what happened? Yeah. Let's get his or her perspective. Let's figure out, okay, and then what are the lessons learned? Right. How can we make sure that this mistake doesn't happen again? And how can we then talk to the team and say, hey, we had an issue. We failed here. Right. Let's be honest about that. We failed here, but this is how we're going to mitigate that, and this is how we're going to move forward. Right. And there is no laying the blame, and it's we are all moving forward together as a team. I think that shows people that it truly is one team. Yeah, exactly. So you can help in those scenarios. Within
Bravo, we have one of our core values is rise together, right? And it's what you just described. It's exactly that, right? It's like no one is going to be left behind, and if we fail as a team, we fail as a team. We win as a team as well, and that is the philosophy, and that is the mindset essentially that we're talking about here when it comes to kindness, because there is an approach, and as kind leaders that we are, we approach it from that perspective with almost like you've heard a growth mindset compared to the scarcity mindset. It's the same type of thing. You're like coming in, okay, what can we learn from here? What is our growth mindset? How can we help each other so this person or a group of people don't make that mistake again, right, in the future? So
exactly right.
Beautiful. So that that highlights a lot of the what we've been talking about, high pressure and really our approach into kind leadership into those environments, right, and making sure that we're taking the right thing. But bringing technology for a second, right? The intersection of technology and kind leadership. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question. I think that it's an interesting world because I think in the technology world, not to overgeneralize, but a lot of folks in the technology world probably would classify themselves as introverts, which can be difficult to deal with as a leader, especially if you're an extroverted leader.
Right.
And so I think using technology to help bring teams together, whether it's Slack or whatever the technology is. The business world is changing a little bit here, right? I mean, it used to be, as a federal contractor for years, I had to report to a specific building in a specific time for a specific number of hours a day, and I had to track all of those hours, and it was very regimented, and this is what I did. And to a certain extent, the COVID pandemic in 2020 has changed a lot of that. There's a lot more work from home now, and that presents both good and bad. I saw that when, I would still wake up at 6:30 in the morning and I'd be down in my office by 7:30, but normally I wouldn't be actually in the office until 8 or 8:30 because I'd then get in my car and drive. Well, now I'm there at 7:30, I'm there an hour early and I start working. And at 5, well, I don't really have much to do. I don't have to drive home. I'm already at home. So, maybe, or 4, maybe I continue working until 5 or 5:30 or whatever. So it's changed the paradigms. And I think anything we can do technology wise to help foster teammates, foster growth of our teams is great. Whether that's, again, collaboration tools, whether that's, whatever that may be. Like, I think building that team in a disparate now working environment is crucial to success.
Right.
So
no, I appreciate that. And I think if I can summarize it, is really providing a platform to build connections.
Yeah.
Right. Or leveraging a platform to build connection, whatever technology you guys use out there. Right. And it's, as humans, again, it's like we need the connection, and we need to learn, we need to connect, we need to understand. And the more and more we connect, the more and more we're comfortable and we build that trust. And at the end of the day, it's about trust. And as we continue to go into our journey, wherever that may be for individuals, the audience out there listening, right, is really understanding how are you connecting with others and leveraging the technology to do that. And it could be as simple as, hey, have you texted a friend or somebody or a colleague just to say hello?
Yeah.
I was thinking about you. Hope everything is well. That's it.
Yeah.
The impact on that? And I do that all the time. I was like, somebody pops up in my head. It's like, oh, I wonder how they're doing. That means I need to reach out and say hello. And they may be going into whatever, the situations. I mean, hey, it was great to hear from you. I actually have the same thing as I said about the my employee.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a gift I have or something, but it's something that I and you listen, right? You just reach out and make the connection with those technology tools that are available compared to like just 200 years ago, even 100 years ago, we didn't didn't have any of this, right? I mean, to connect to somebody across the world, it was unbelievable. I mean, you couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, the technology nowadays is absolutely incredible to be able to hit somebody across the world in the span of seconds instead of weeks or months or whatever the case may be is kind of game changing for things. Somehow that ability to draw the world closer has also somehow driven the world a little bit more apart, which is, just fascinating from a psychological standpoint, and I'm not a psychologist. Nor a sociologist. I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So, like, I don't know all the fundamentals, but it's pretty clear that we're able to, I'm able to hop on some technology platform and within seconds have an answer back from an engineering leader or a PM from my company within seconds about a new product we've got coming out that I got a question about. And he lives halfway around the world. That's incredible. And yet at the same time, I also have to make sure I'm making time to go, whether it's have lunch or have drinks or just reach out to my employees, my direct reports that are quite literally 7 minutes away from my house that live super close to me. That's a fascinating conundrum that we have as leaders, that we both have all of that ability, but we've got to also understand that there's still that human aspect that we have to maintain.
So all in all, is leverage the technology to continue to emphasize and push this kind of leadership and who you are, right? Be yourself and continue to reach out to folks. And like technology here, for example, this podcast, I'm just getting started, so I don't have a big audience, right? But still, the things that we're saying, is reaching folks, right?
Yes.
And eventually we'll reach many, many folks out there, right?
Yeah.
And in the past, it was just maybe you and I talking and that's it, right? It stays right within us, right?
Right.
But now we're talking, we're sharing experiences, our thoughts. And as you and I both listen to podcasts, we're hearing that as well from other things, right? And we're just making this world a better world, I feel like, right? And I'm really happy to have started this and really bring in some amazing guests to talk about this, because people do need to hear about kind leadership and what it means. And it could mean different things for a lot of people, but at the same time, it's really caring. It's really leading with empathy and those kinds of things. You can't, hopefully the audience is not getting tired tired of me because we keep defining the same thing, but I'm bringing different guests from different perspectives too, right?
Yeah.
That allow us to do that. So with that thought, as it relates to how are you incorporating within your, let's pick Aero Elite for a second. Is there a culture that you're building? And if so, how are you kind of incorporating your kind leadership into the organization?
Yeah, I should have been more prepared for this one because we just did so every year we do I call it a State of the Union address for Aero Elite. I rent out a theater, everybody comes in, all the employees that can come in. Some are farther away, so they go by Zoom. We block their schedules out, so we want them there. And the first probably 35 minutes of my presentation to them was all about culture and leadership. And one of the things I had a quote in there was, a lot of businesses don't build the culture they want, they build the culture they tolerate. And for me, that was kind of the pivot point to talk to my employees about, hey, we're building a different culture here. A lot of students at flight schools believe that they're nothing more than a walking credit card. They walk in, they do their flight lesson, they pay for it with their credit card, they walk back out. We're trying very desperately to build something different. And we want people to come in. You came in on Sunday and there's pizza there on Sunday and I'm a big sports guy, so there's English Premier League soccer happening, and there's couches set up with large TVs that people can come, and there's power outlets all around so that if you wanted to plug your laptop in and do work out of there, you can. Like, we want people to come and stay and be part of, for lack of a better term, our family. Not just walk in, do a flight, pay, leave, stay, hang out with us. And so if that's the culture you want to build, then when you hire folks, you have to hire people that you believe will continue to uphold that culture. And so, I know I said this to somebody, I never liked interviewing. I never liked being the interviewee. It's a high pressure environment, and you're afraid you're going to say something wrong, and then you're going to get that question of well, what's your biggest weakness, and now you got to figure out a weakness that you can turn into a strength, and it's a whole game, and I never liked it. The only thing worse than being the interviewee is being the interviewer and having to figure out what to ask this person. And so I just reject it and say, hey, you know what, we're just going to have a conversation here. I don't need to necessarily know about all of your CFI, flight instructor credentials, and how do you teach this particular maneuver, and how does that compare to others? And I don't need to know any of that, actually, because that will come out in the wash. Just like when I interview somebody on the technology side, I don't need to know that the technology we're selling through and through. I kind of believe I can teach anybody that part. What I need to know, though, is, are you going to fit in with the culture of the company, how you're going to fit in, and whether you're going to be a good asset. And those are the questions. So when you frame it that way, now it's just a conversation with somebody. And generally speaking, I will turn that on its head and say, hey, how do you, what questions do you have for me about the company? What can I answer here about our company? Because this is, whether you believe it or not, this is a two-way street. You're choosing us just as much as we're choosing you. So that's kind of where I'm at with the whole interview process and building that culture is, you've got to hire properly. And you also, as a leader, have to have the ability to say, I don't know that this is working out. This may be a great person, but they are a detriment to the culture we're trying to build. They are against what we're trying to do. And we've got to probably make a decision on that. That becomes the tough questions.
And those are the tough questions sometimes that gets misinterpreted from a kind leader that we want to avoid sometimes, like, oh no, man, so like, we've been working with this person for so long, and and I don't want to get prickly, and I don't want to touch it. But at the end of the day, it's a disservice to the organization. It's a disservice to the team, right? Because they're seeing, going back to what you said, you get what you tolerate. Right? You get what you tolerate, right? And if you continue to tolerate, then you're going to lose a lot of that great culture and things that you're doing in your organization. Or if you're not leading an organization, leading your team or whatnot, is you get what you tolerate. Remember that, right? And make sure that you don't tolerate the things that you don't want to get.
Right. And it becomes a slippery slope. I mean, one employee will see you tolerating, not generally accepted behavior from one employee or whatever, and they're going to go, okay, well, if Tim's okay with that person doing that, then why am I doing it this way? I'm just going to go and do it my own way, and that becomes a path that you don't want to go on. So you have to build a culture, and then you have to not tolerate people moving that culture if you want to keep it that way. Sometimes culture changing is a good thing,
right.
I mean, that's it adapts to the people, and you can do that. So you want to be careful about being too rigid, but that's why we're leaders,
exactly,
to make those big decisions,
build the framework and all that stuff. But I like what you said about coming back to Aero Elite as it relates to, and it's because what I'm about to say can go into any business, but it's about creating the culture to then create an amazing experience for your customers.
Yes.
And, I'm in the IT as well, and the government contracting as well as in Fortune 500, right? And it's about having the right people with the right mindset and culture values that we have that are delivering those to our customers, so that our customers have that experience. They're not just a credit card. They're not just checking the box, right? And it's not easy, right? It takes time. It takes a lot of people to make sure that we stay connected and stay in communication with what is it that we're here for, right?
Yeah, you can't be on autopilot. You can't. You gotta. I guess pun intended.
Yeah.
But you can't be on autopilot as a especially if you're in some version of the service industry. You have to be on your game at all times, 100%, providing good experiences, or as everybody knows, positive experiences should be the norm. They are not, generally speaking, widely shared. Negative experiences, unfortunately, for most businesses, are shared very wide, very fast. And so you have to be ready with those positive ones.
Absolutely. Well, this is great. I can keep talking about aviation. I can talk about my experience, my flight that I did yesterday with as an example. But we'll pause here because I think it's been a great conversation, a lot of great nuggets, and then we're gonna continue to do these, and maybe in the future, we can bring you back again and we can chat some more for sure. So
I'd love that.
A few more questions before we wrap it up is, what's your advice to future leaders out there?
My advice to future leaders is, you have to know yourself. So you have to be able to articulate that. If somebody asks you, who is Gino, who is Tim, you have to have an answer for that. And it's got to be truthful. You can't be some made up, answer. And as soon as you figure that out, which that is not easy to figure out for anybody. And to be quite honest, even in my mid 40s, I'm still figuring parts of it out. So, but once you know who you are, that's when you can lead people. But at a minimum, my advice is just super simple. It's, what's happening in your world at all times. You have no clue what's happening in everybody else's world. So keep that in mind. Make sure that, when somebody messes up, which will happen, just keep that in mind and have a conversation about it. Try not to fly off the handle, try not to get upset, but use that empathy.
For sure. Listen
first,
right? 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Exactly. For a reason.
Exactly. All right. Here's one of my favorite questions. If you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
Oh boy. This is a fantastic question. There's tons of answers, right? And I'm all over the map with this one. I was thinking about this. Because some of the answers are, I want more, I'm a learner. I want more leadership, nuggets. So, is it a George Washington? Hey, you're a tremendous, I'm a history guy.
That's right.
Tremendous leader of men, founder of the United States, all that kind of stuff. Like, I bet you I could glean 100 nuggets from him. Wow. Not to go too far off the rails a little bit, but the probable answer for me that I keep coming back to is my father. He's not around anymore, was not able to see any of the stuff. He passed away in 2010. Not able to see anything that I've done with the flight school. It would be fantastic just to go, because he was also a tremendous leader of men and women, and it would be fantastic to have a cup of coffee, a Coors Light was his drink of choice typically. But have a drink with him. That's and awesome. Sit down and go, okay, all of those lessons I didn't get, I took a lot, but all those lessons I didn't take, I now bring them. Let's go. Cause I need more of that now. And here's how we're going. That's gotta be the answer.
Oh man, that's amazing. Sorry to hear about your loss there, but it's
Appreciate
amazing
that.
coming back, and I'm sure he's proud, of all the things and all the accomplishments you've done.
Appreciate that. I hope so.
Absolutely. Where can the listeners connect with you?
Yeah. So, typical Gen X here. I straddle the analog and the digital age. So you can find me on just about every social media platform. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on, Aero Elites on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find me any of those places. aeflight.com is Aero Elite's website. But find me anywhere. Love talking about this stuff. Love, as Gino, as you know, love talking just in general. So happy to connect with anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. It's been great. Any final thoughts before we close out?
No, just thank you. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for what you're doing with the Kind Leadership Podcast, because I think a lot of this needs to get out there, and we need to be telling people that there is a way to do this with empathy, with kindness, and that can also breed success. Yeah. And so if you can do all of those things, man, you got the world is your oyster.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah. I appreciate that. It was one of the things that just came to me last year. I was like, we got to put out there and just communicate, right? Yeah. Just bring guests, share that it's you can lead with kindness, you can lead with empathy, you can create an amazing organization, through that. And
this is possible.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. So thanks again, Tim, for joining us, and thank you all for listening in and coming back every week. I'm trying to record once a week, but
perfect.
As long as we
I'll keep listening.
As long as we get some guests, but amazing. I'm excited. This will be episode, I believe, 7. So we're moving right along.
Yeah,
and it's exciting of the feedback that I'm getting. So if you want to give me feedback on ideas with guests that you want to send, I'm talking to you, Tim, or anybody out there as well, please send them my way. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I can share my information online as well. But yeah, excited, great time, great nuggets here that you provided today. So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And with that, be kind, bring value, rise together, everybody. Have an amazing day.